So first things first, Phil, how are you?
Good, I'm doing good.
It's very good to hear. So before we jump into the latest record, I like to begin in the beginning. Do you remember when you first realized that music was your path?
Music, it wasn't, some people have an epiphany, or some people have a moment that they can say, oh, I knew this was for me. I think that I thought that I would always play in a band. It took me a long time to think that that's all I would do for a living.
Okay.
You know, playing heavy music like we do, playing heavy metal, it didn't seem like it was realistic to only play in a band for a living. I'm incredibly fortunate to be able to do this. So it was something that over time I kind of was like, maybe this is actually real. The last time I had a regular day job, I think it was in 2004.
Okay.
And I didn't feel like, wow, this is actually a career, probably until 2008, 2009.
Okay.
So I don't think that there was a moment that I was like, wow, this is what I'm going to do. It kind of happened, and then I was like, holy cow, this is what I'm doing more than this is what I'm going to do. I figured I would always play in a band part-time. I love playing shows. I loved metal. I loved, everything about the scene and stuff.
How come? What was the attraction?
I'm the guy that likes playing shows. Okay. So there are some artists that really enjoy the studio time. Some artists really enjoy the creative process. For me, those tend to be stressful. And oftentimes it's hard for me to write lyrics because my lyrics tend to be really personal, and they're always about things that have happened. And we make jokes about it in the band that I write my best stuff when I'm miserable. So it's not always something that I'm looking forward to. But performing and seeing that something that I've gone through has either helped people or they can relate to it, that's the real payoff for me, is that affirmation from other people saying, I understand what you're saying. Right. I've been there, and I appreciate you writing this song and telling me that I'm not the only person that's felt like that, you know?
Who were the artists that did that for you as you were growing up?
When it comes to metal and stuff like that, I really listen to a lot of like Metallica and then death metal. Lyrically, all the stuff that really always hit me tended to be not metal.
Okay.
I was a big fan of, was and still am a big fan of Sarah McLachlan. Fumbling Towards Ecstasy, the record, really hit me because she was so vulnerable, and you could hear the honesty in her music. So, and when I was really starting to become a lyricist and really starting to dive into it and learn how to write stuff that mattered, I think I was really into the Lilith Fair scene. Maybe your listeners or your viewers will remember the Lilith Fair was an all-female artist tour that went around the U.S. They had the Cranberries, and they had Tracy Chapman, and Jewel was on it, and the honesty in the lyrics that a lot of female artists wrote really hit me, and that's kind of what inspired me to be honest in writing lyrics. Before that, I didn't feel like I wrote anything that was cool. Bands like Iron Maiden, I use them as an example a lot. Steve Harris and Bruce Dickinson, they can really craft a song that's compelling about a historical event or something like that. And I don't feel like I can write something that is meaningful or people will really relate to or can understand if I'm trying to write about an event. Right. Usually I feel like the band's right. My best stuff comes out when I'm miserable. So.
But that's an interesting point, because bring in that honesty, that vulnerability then to the lyrics. Especially in metal, I mean, there is somewhat of a massive culture at times.
Sure, sure,
I
yeah.
mean, well, like you say, the black metal, there's songs about the devil and all kinds of. So bringing that vulnerability and personality to the lyrics, what was that like, and was that a difficult process for you, or did it was there a kind of epiphany moment?
I've definitely taken heat for it because of the the macho
Right.
stuff that's associated with music. When you write songs about your own personal vulnerability, there are people that are going to attack you for it and call you names and mock you and stuff. It's worked out well for us though, so it doesn't much matter if people don't like the song "What If I Was Nothing" or people don't like the lyrics. Tough guys don't like it. Tough shit, because there's a lot of people that do. So it's never been something that I've been apprehensive about.
Right.
Thankfully.
Oh, that's good. I want to just quickly go into that period that you mentioned between 2004 and 2008-9.
Mm-hmm.
Those 4 years, because you say in 2004 was the last time you had a regular job or a normal job. What were those 4 years like to kind of get the band going and on the track to where it is now?
A lot of touring, a lot of time spent in the van, a lot of time, losing sleep, sleeping in the van. That was the main focus of my life for, that 4 or 5 years was just spending as much time as we could on the road and getting in front of as many people as we can. And that's still the best. I still think that that's the best way to really build a solid fan base. You'll see a lot of bands or a lot of artists nowadays, they'll get famous on YouTube or they'll have a hit on YouTube, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have the ability to have a career out of it. It can go away just as fast as it comes. When you're out there touring and getting in front of people and constantly in front of new people, that's what seems to me the best way to really lay a solid foundation for your band.
What did you discover or learn about yourself in those 4 years being on the road, and then I suppose having your thoughts to yourself a lot of the time? Is there something that maybe it's just about music, or something that you've realized in that period about yourself?
I think that I learned that I was more determined than I thought I was. It's easy to say that you're determined. It's easy to talk. It's easy to say, oh, I would do this or I wouldn't do that, when you don't have to do it. But to really, to quit your job and get in a van with no promise of success, no promise of anything except for, you've got a month of shows booked, and hopefully the next month you'll have another month of shows booked or soon after. I think that's when I realized that a lot of life is just going and putting the effort in to really do something, whatever it may be.
Is that then where your family and the military background comes in a little bit?
The military is very different, obviously, than being in a band, but I don't know. I mean, I finished boot camp, and to me, boot camp wasn't difficult.
Okay.
I knew what I was getting into, and I'm sure that it is difficult for some people. The transition from, being just a person that doesn't have to listen to anyone and can do whatever they want whenever they want, and then going to a situation where everything is so structured, it can be really tough. I knew what I was getting into, and I didn't have the intention of going into the military and changing the military, which some people it seems like they think they're going to do that, and that never works well. If you join the military, you better conform with the military, or you're going to quickly realize that your life is miserable, and it will be miserable. It will continue to be miserable until you do conform with the military. So I think there is a certain amount of determination that you have to to manage to make it through boot camp and a certain amount of discipline. But I didn't feel like it was a surprise or anything. I knew what I was getting into. So maybe that it didn't dawn on me that it did take so much determination, because I was like, well, this is what you have to do this. When you're starting your own business or you're a musician or whatever, you don't have a safety net or promise of anything except for hopefully we get more shows. So I think that is really where I kind of realized that, you know, I am a fairly determined person when I set my mind to
Right.
it, to something.
Do you have that same mentality now then? Because obviously there has been some success, and then you're doing well, I suppose. So do you still have that sense of kind of wanting to prove something, or has that changed a little bit?
I think so. I mean, we do try to. I feel like we try to put out the best music that we can that represents where we are. And I think that if you don't focus on trying to continually better yourself and expand expand what you do, you run the risk of becoming stagnant. So I think so.